Hey guys, welcome back to another Jake Bakes. I'm here in historic Webster Groves doing some Christmas shopping, and I'm feeling so homey and so cozy, and I need to go make something that reminds me of friends and family. So I'm gonna make this delicious upper Midwest tradition of a Danish Kringle. It's just the best breakfast thing. It's so cinnamony and warm and spicy and flaky deliciousness. I can't wait to make this with you guys. So let's get in the kitchen and let's get started. I have 2 1/4 cups of flour, about 1/3 cup of granulated white sugar, and then a good pinch of salt. We just wanna mix all of these dry ingredients together. And while I do this, I'm gonna grab my wet ingredients. I've got 1/2 cup of warm milk, and I've got 1/4 cup of warm water. I'm gonna add in 1 packet of active dry yeast and dissolve that inside. Mix this together. I'm doing this after I've started this because you want to let this sit and let the yeast actually dissolve, start to bloom a little bit and become active. If you have a little clumps, that's okay. They'll mostly dissolve. And to that, I'm going to go ahead and add a teaspoon of good vanilla extract. Perfect. Set this aside while we do the kind of magic part of this, which is what makes this so decadent. Got my stick of butter fresh from the freezer, so it's very, very cold. I'm going to go ahead and grate this butter into my flour. This is what's gonna give us a very light and flaky crust. It's kind of like a mock puff pastry in a certain sense. This is my kind of secret way of getting the most flaky pie crust ever, as well as flaky pastry. So this way, with the butter kind of being grated like this, helps me to get the right consistency basically every time. And then all I'm gonna do is toss this butter in the flour. And then once we've got it all coated, I'm gonna rub just a little bit in because I don't want too big of chunks. You can see a lot of it is mixed in. You can see there's still like a few little pebbles of butter, which is great because when it bakes, that's gonna melt and really puff up. And now to this, I make a little well and pour that yeast and water and milk and vanilla mixture right in the center and crack 1 egg in. Break the egg yolk and kind of mix this in slowly. You're gonna have a very, very wet dough, so you don't want to add more flour to this. So that's about good. I wanna go ahead and now move over to a spatula and just mix the rest of this in. And you wanna move fairly quickly because you don't want that butter to melt too much. Once it starts to come all together and you don't have any pockets of dry flour, we can go ahead and let this sit aside for about 1/2 hour to 2 hours until it's cold. If you put it outside, like when you're in Wisconsin or Minnesota and it's very cold outside, maybe just 1/2 hour. If you are in the Midwest, probably put it in the freezer or the fridge for 2 hours at least until it's nice and firm. Now, while the dough is chilling, we want to get our filling together. I've got 1 cup of packed brown sugar, to which I'm going to add 1.5 cups of walnuts. And maybe a bigger bowl. Perfect. So I'm just gonna go ahead and crush some of these walnuts up in here. Do this in the food processor as well. That's actually the way I prefer to, but I like to show, you know, you don't always need all of these expensive gadgets to bake. You just need your hands. To this, get a good pinch of salt because we wanna temper down that sweet. We're going to add 1/3 cup of butter. And it's gonna be like a pasty strudel, kind of the consistency of wet sand. Now that it's coming together mostly, I'm just gonna go ahead and add in a tablespoon of cinnamon. I'm not even a huge walnut person. However, this just gives it almost like a nice texture and a really good flavor. I really like how buttery they are. This looks good. You can pulse this even finer, but I like the little chunks of nuts in there. They're really nice. This is the consistency we're looking for. This is what's gonna go inside of that delicious dough. Our dough is nicely chilled. This recipe makes 2 Kringles. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this in half. Now flour your board, and then you're just gonna kind of roll this out a little bit. Now, we've got it like that, and we're gonna flatten this guy out. We're looking for about 3 inches long, or 3 inches wide, I'm sorry. Between 18 and 2 feet, depending on how big you want your Kringle. You want a good, kind of all the same length. And I actually like it a little bit wider than 3 inches just because it's a lot easier to fold over then. We're gonna fill this guy full of really delicious filling. Perfect. Now, it's time to assemble our Kringle. I'm gonna go ahead and brush this guy with some egg wash. This helps the filling to stick. It also helps the dough to stick to itself when we're going to put this all together. I'm gonna grab some filling and start dropping this along. It's okay if it looks like a lot of filling. This is actually filling for 2 Kringles. Like I said, this makes 2 recipe worth. Where I'm gonna reserve the other half of this, and I'm gonna make an apple one as well, because I like having some options. You wanna have something a little bit for everybody. All right, now that this is all done, we can go ahead and start to fold this up. I go around like this, and pinch it together, and then once that starts to get pinched, just go ahead and do this all together. So you should have a nice little seam. Don't be afraid when it starts to leak in the oven. It's going to burst open a little bit. That is okay. The nuts help to actually kind of make a lot of that stick inside. I've got a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. And now you're gonna flip it and put it on the baking sheet. You want seam side down. Just gonna combine these 2 ends together. And I just kind of work it together until it's one piece of dough. I'm gonna brush this with an egg wash just on top to give it a little bit more of a golden look when it bakes. Rise at room temperature for about a half hour, just so that it's a little bit more puffy. Set this aside. I'm gonna do that other Kringle, but in about a half hour of rising, when it's nice and puffy, we're gonna get it in the oven at 350 for about 20 to 25 minutes until golden brown and delicious. All right, wonderful. These are nice and cooled. I let them out of the oven, and then about 10 minutes they've set, so they're still slightly warm, but they're perfect for some icing. So I went ahead and mixed about 3 tablespoons of milk with about 2 to 3 cups of powdered sugar. So I've already gone and iced the apple one, but I'm gonna go ahead and ice this one. Just using like a Ziploc bag. It's the best trick ever. Then I like to just go in and out like this. And then you can let this sit and kind of let the icing sit up, or if you're impatient like me, I'm just gonna dive right in as soon as I get this iced. It's like something you'd get from a good bakery or a Jakery bakery. I can't wait to taste this. Get a little tasty. It's so flaky. Like, look at those flakies. It's like the best toaster strudel slash Pop-Tart slash amazing pastry. But the walnuts give a really nice texture in there too. That is unbelievable. Guys, thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen again. Have a Kringle, invite your friends over, and they will love you all the more for it. Thank you guys again for joining me in the kitchen, and we will see you here next time on another Jake Bakes. Ooh, do I go for apple? Or cinnamon? Jingle bells, jingle all the way. It's apple, that's what it is.